My name is Amanda, and I'm 25 years old. 7 years ago, my father threw me out of our family home with nothing but a backpack and $17 in my pocket. Last week, I became his boss. I know that sounds impossible. Trust me, I'm still processing it myself. But sometimes life has a way of coming full circle in the most unexpected ways. If you're watching this right now, you're about to hear a story that changed everything I thought I knew about family, loyalty, and what it means to truly succeed. This isn't just about revenge or getting even, it's about something much deeper. Picture this. It's a Tuesday evening in March 2018. I'm 18 years old, sitting at our family dinner table, the same oak table where I'd done homework for years, where we'd celebrated birthdays and holidays, where my younger brother Jake would spill cereal every morning. My father, Robert, sits at the head of the table like he always did. He's a big man with calloused hands and a voice that could fill a room. He worked construction for 30 years before starting his own company. Mom always said he built everything with his bare hands, including our family. That night, everything fell apart. "Amanda, we need to talk," Dad said, not looking up from his meatloaf. His voice had that edge I'd learned to recognize, the one that meant trouble. My stomach dropped. I'd been dreading this conversation for weeks. See, I'd made a decision that went against everything my family expected of me. Instead of staying local and working for Dad's construction company like my brother planned to do, I'd been accepted to a business program at the state university 2 hours away. But here's the thing nobody talks about in those heartwarming family stories. Sometimes following your dreams means disappointing the people you love most. "I know you think college is the right choice," Dad continued, his fork scraping against the plate. "But we need you here. The business is growing. Jake's still in high school. You have responsibilities." I felt the familiar weight of expectations settling on my shoulders. The same weight I'd carried since I was 12 and started helping with Dad's paperwork. The weight of being the reliable one, the responsible one, the one who always put family first. "Dad, I've already enrolled. The scholarship covers most of my tuition. This is my chance to—" "Your chance to what?" His voice rose. "To think you're better than us? To abandon your family when we need you most?" The silence that followed was deafening. Mom stared at her plate. Jake shifted uncomfortably in his chair. This wasn't the first time we'd had this conversation, but something felt different, final. "I'm not abandoning anyone," I said quietly. "I'm trying to build a future." That's when Dad stood up. His chair scraped against the floor with a sound that still haunts me. His face was red, the vein in his forehead pulsing the way it did when he was really angry. "You want to build a future? Fine, but you won't do it under my roof." The words hit me like a physical blow. I looked around the table, hoping someone would speak up. Mom's eyes were filled with tears, but she stayed silent. Jake looked terrified. "Dad, please, get out." 2 words. That's all it took to shatter 18 years of family bonds. If you are watching this right now, drop a comment letting me know where you are viewing from. Before I tell you about this life-changing decision, hit like and subscribe to hear more real stories about family loyalty and betrayal that might just change how you see your own relationships. What happened next changed the trajectory of my entire life. But to understand how I ended up becoming my father's boss, you need to know about the family I left behind that night. You need to understand the complex web of relationships that shaped who I became. Because this story isn't just about a stubborn teenager and an angry father. It's about what happens when love becomes conditional, when family loyalty is used as a weapon, and when the person you're trying to please the most is the one who believes in you the least. The irony is that everything Dad taught me about business, about perseverance, about never giving up, is exactly what led me back to that same dinner table 7 years later. Only this time, I was the one making the decisions. To understand how everything unraveled, you need to know who we were before. That terrible Tuesday night, the Patterson family looked perfect from the outside. Dad's construction business was thriving. We lived in a beautiful 4-bedroom house that he'd built himself. Mom kept an immaculate garden. We went to church every Sunday. But perfection is often just a carefully constructed facade. My father, Robert Patterson, was the kind of man people respected and feared in equal measure. He'd started with nothing, working as a day laborer before slowly building his company. Patterson Construction had become one of the most successful firms in our county. Dad was proud of that legacy, maybe too proud. He had this way of making everything about the business. Family dinners became strategy sessions. Vacations were planned around construction schedules. Even our family motto, which he'd painted in wooden letters above the fireplace, read, "Built to last." I used to think it meant our family. Now I realize it was always about the company. Mom, Linda, was Dad's perfect complement. She handled the books, managed the office, and somehow made it all look effortless. She was the type of woman who could host a dinner party for 20 while coordinating 3 job sites and still have perfectly curled hair. But she lived in Dad's shadow, always deferring to his decisions, even when she disagreed. Then there was my brother Jake, 3 years younger and Dad's obvious favorite. Jake had Dad's build, his mechanical aptitude, and most importantly, his complete devotion to the family business. Even at 15, Jake could frame a wall faster than most of Dad's crew. He never questioned the plan. College wasn't even on his radar. Why would it be when he had a guaranteed future handed to him? And then there was me, the firstborn, the one who was supposed to set the example. I was different from the start, and everyone knew it. While Jake was building model cars, I was reading business magazines. While he was learning to use power tools, I was teaching myself spreadsheet formulas. Dad noticed, of course. When I was 14, he started bringing me to the office after school. "Amanda's got the head for numbers," he'd tell clients. "She'll run this place someday." But somewhere along the way, that prediction became a prison sentence. See, Dad had this vision of a family empire. Patterson Construction would grow into Patterson Enterprises. Jake would handle the construction side. I'd manage the business operations. Mom would continue holding everything together. It was a beautiful plan, except nobody asked me if I wanted to be part of it. The cracks started showing my junior year of high school. I'd been researching business programs, dreaming of studying marketing and entrepreneurship. I wanted to understand how companies grew, how they innovated, how they adapted to changing markets. "Why do you need college for that?" Dad would ask whenever I brought it up. "You're learning real business right here. Books can't teach you what experience can." But I knew there was more to learn. I could feel it in my bones. The construction industry was changing. Technology was revolutionizing everything. Dad's way of doing business worked, but it wasn't the only way. My guidance counselor, Mrs. Rodriguez, saw something in me that my family couldn't. She helped me apply for scholarships, wrote recommendation letters, and most importantly, she believed I had potential beyond the family business. Have you ever felt trapped by other people's expectations? I want to ask you that question because it's something I struggled with for years. When the people who love you most have already decided your future, it takes incredible courage to choose your own path. The scholarship letter arrived on a Thursday in February. Full tuition to the State University's business program. It felt like winning the lottery and receiving a death sentence at the same time. I knew it would change everything. I waited 2 weeks to tell my parents. 2 weeks of carrying this secret, knowing it would disappoint them. But I also knew it was my only chance to become the person I was meant to be. The night I finally told them, Mom cried. Not tears of pride or excitement. Tears of fear and betrayal. "How could you apply without telling us?" she asked. "Don't we matter to you?" That question haunted me because the truth was complicated. They mattered more than anything. But so did my future. So did my dreams. So did becoming someone I could be proud of. The weeks leading up to that final confrontation were filled with tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. Dad stopped asking me to help with the books. Mom would look at me with these wounded eyes, like I'd personally betrayed her. Jake was caught in the middle, trying to be loyal to everyone and succeeding with no one. But the real drama was happening, behind the scenes, and I didn't fully understand it until years later. You see, Patterson Construction was facing its biggest challenge ever. A massive development project had gone wrong. The city had changed zoning requirements mid-construction, and Dad's company was hemorrhaging money. The stress was eating him alive, though he'd never admit it. "Amanda," he'd said one evening in late February, "I need you to look at these numbers. Something's not adding up." I spent hours poring over the financial statements. What I found made my stomach turn. The company was 3 months away from bankruptcy. Dad had been using personal loans to cover payroll. The house I'd grown up in was leveraged to the hilt. "Dad, we need to restructure the debt. Maybe consider partnering with a larger firm. There are options here." But Dad's pride wouldn't let him hear it. "We don't need help from outsiders. This is temporary. We've weathered storms before." That's when I realized something crucial. My college acceptance wasn't just about my dreams anymore. It was about escape from a sinking ship, and Dad knew it. Meanwhile, something beautiful was happening that I almost missed in all the chaos. My relationship with my grandmother, Dad's mother, was deepening in unexpected ways. Grandma Rose had always been the family rebel. She'd started her own bakery in the 1970s when most women her age were expected to stay home. She'd sold it for a small fortune in the 1990s and invested wisely. Rose Patterson was quietly wealthy, fiercely independent, and completely unimpressed by her son's machismo. "Your father thinks success means never asking for help," she told me one afternoon over tea. "But the smartest people I know surround themselves with other smart people. That's what college will give you, sweetheart. Not just knowledge, but connections." Rose had been watching the family drama unfold with increasing frustration. She'd offered to help with the company's financial troubles, but Dad had refused. She'd suggested that I might bring fresh perspectives to the business, but Dad couldn't see past his own stubborn vision. "Don't let his fear trap you," Rose whispered to me after Sunday dinner. "I've seen too many bright young women sacrifice their potential for other people's comfort. You're meant for bigger things." She slipped me an envelope that day. Inside was a check for $5,000. "Emergency money," she said. "Promise me you won't tell your father. And promise me you won't give up on yourself." Can you imagine carrying that secret? The guilt was overwhelming. Part of me felt like I was betraying my family by accepting help they'd refused. But another part of me knew Rose was giving me something precious. The freedom to choose. The subplot that really broke my heart involved Jake. My little brother was struggling more than anyone realized. While everyone focused on my college rebellion, Jake was quietly falling apart. He'd started having panic attacks at school. The pressure of being the good child, the one who would save the family business, was crushing him. But he was 15 and didn't have the vocabulary to express what he was feeling. One night in early March, I found him crying in the garage. He was sitting on the floor next to Dad's workbench, holding one of the wooden blocks he'd played with as a kid. "I don't think I can do it," he whispered. "Be like Dad. Run the company. I'm not smart like you, Amanda. What if I mess everything up?" My heart shattered. This sweet, talented boy had been carrying the weight of impossible expectations. While I was fighting for the right to leave, he was trapped without even knowing there could be another choice. "Jake, you're brilliant, but you don't have to be Dad. You can be yourself." But then who will save everything?" That question haunted me, because the truth was, nobody could save our family from itself. Not me, not Jake, not even Dad's stubborn determination. We were all drowning in expectations and pride and fear. If you've ever felt responsible for fixing your family's problems, let me know in the comments. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is save yourself first. The final explosion happened on the night I mentioned earlier, but what I didn't tell you was how it really started. It wasn't just about college. It was about everything that had been building for months. I'd made a decision that afternoon that changed everything. After finding Jake crying in the garage, after watching Mom silently worry herself sick, after seeing Dad's company slowly crumble despite his desperate efforts to save it, I'd called the university admissions office. I deferred my enrollment. I know what you're thinking. After everything I've told you about following dreams and refusing to be trapped, I gave in. But here's the thing about real life. Sometimes love makes you do things that feel like giving up, but are actually the hardest choice of all. I walked into that Tuesday dinner planning to tell my family I would stay. I would help save the company. I would put their needs before my own dreams, just like I always had. But fate had other plans. That afternoon, Dad had received a call from the bank. They were calling in the loans. Patterson Construction had 72 hours to come up with $200,000 or face immediate foreclosure. Dad's world was ending, and he was looking for someone to blame. "I got a call today," he said, setting down his fork with deliberate precision. "Seems someone's been asking questions about the company. Someone called the university financial aid office asking about deferring scholarships due to family financial hardship." My blood ran cold. I'd mentioned our situation when I called to defer, hoping they might hold my spot if things improved. I'd never imagined they would reach out to verify the information. "Dad, I can explain." "Can you?" Because what I'm hearing is that my own daughter has been telling strangers that we're broke, that we're failures, that we need pity. The accusation hit like a slap. That's not what happened. I was trying to help. I deferred my enrollment because what? Because you think we need saving. Because little Amanda is going to sacrifice herself for the family business? His voice was rising now, that dangerous edge getting sharper. Mom reached out to touch his arm, but he pulled away. "Robert, please." She was trying to do the right thing? The right thing? He laughed, but there was no humor in it. The right thing would have been loyalty from the beginning. Not this back and forth nonsense. Not making us beg for your help. That's when something inside me snapped. All the guilt, all the fear, all the months of trying to be perfect for everyone else while losing myself in the process. It erupted. "I never made you beg for anything. I've been helping this family since I was 12 years old. I've sacrificed everything for this company, for this family, and it's still not enough." Jake dropped his fork. Mom gasped. Dad's face went purple. "Sacrificed? You think living in this house, having food on the table, having opportunities is a sacrifice? I think having my entire future planned without my input is a sacrifice. I think being expected to give up my dreams because you're too proud to adapt is a sacrifice. I think pretending everything is fine while we're 3 months from bankruptcy is a sacrifice. The moment those words left my mouth, I knew I'd crossed a line. Dad's financial troubles weren't my secret to share, even with family. But the truth had a way of demanding to be heard. Dad stood up so fast his chair toppled backward. How dare you? How dare you throw my struggles in my face? Everything I've done has been for this family. No, Dad. Everything you've done has been for your ego. The silence that followed was deafening. Even Jake had stopped breathing. Mom's hand was pressed to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. When Dad finally spoke, his voice was deadly quiet. Get out. Dad! Get out of my house! The roar echoed through the room, through the house, through my entire world. And in that moment, I realized something profound and heartbreaking. Sometimes the people who claim to love you most are the ones who accept you least. I looked at Mom, hoping she'd intervene. She looked away. I looked at Jake, hoping he'd speak up. He stared at his plate. Fine, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. I'll go. But I want you to remember this moment, Dad, because someday you're going to realize what you just threw away. Have you ever had a moment that changed your entire life trajectory? Drop a comment and tell me about it. Because what happened next was something none of us could have predicted. I left that night with nothing but my backpack, $17, and Rose's emergency check folded in my pocket. I drove to Grandma Rose's house, tears streaming down my face, not sure if I was more angry or heartbroken. Rose opened her door before I even knocked. Somehow, she always knew. He threw you out, didn't he? She said, pulling me into a hug that smelled like lavender and determination. That night changed everything. Rose didn't just offer me a place to stay. She offered me something I'd never had before. Unconditional support for my choices. She helped me re-enroll at the university, drove me to campus herself, and hugged me goodbye with fierce pride. Show them what Patterson women are really made of, she whispered. College was harder than I'd expected, but not because of the academics. The loneliness was crushing. Jake texted me secretly for the first few weeks, but even those messages stopped when Dad found out. Mom sent me a birthday card that first year with no return address and $20 tucked inside. Dad didn't contact me at all, but I threw myself into my studies with the intensity of someone who had something to prove. Business law, marketing strategy, organizational psychology, financial management. I absorbed everything like a sponge. My professors noticed. My classmates noticed. Most importantly, I noticed something changing in myself. For the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to be what someone else expected. I was becoming who I actually was. During my junior year, something incredible happened. I was selected for an internship with Morrison Development Group, one of the largest construction and development companies in the state. The CEO, Margaret Morrison, was exactly the kind of leader I aspired to become. Brilliant, innovative, and completely unafraid to challenge industry traditions. You have instincts, Margaret told me during my performance review. And more importantly, you have integrity. Those are rare qualities in this business. By my senior year, Margaret offered me a full-time position after graduation. Not just any position, but a management track role that would let me work on major projects from day one. It was everything I'd dreamed of and more. But here's where the story gets really interesting. Remember Patterson Construction's financial troubles? Well, they'd gotten worse, much worse. Dad's pride had prevented him from making the changes necessary to survive. By 2021, he was facing complete bankruptcy. That's when Morrison Development Group stepped in. You see, Margaret had been watching the local construction market, looking for opportunities to expand. She'd identified several smaller companies that had good reputations but poor financial management. Patterson Construction was at the top of her list. I was in Margaret's office when she first mentioned it. "There's a local firm I'm considering acquiring. Patterson Construction. Ever heard of them?" My heart stopped. I hadn't spoken to my family in 3 years. I had no idea how they were doing, how the business had fared, whether they were even still operating. "Actually," I said, my voice barely steady, "that's my father's company." Margaret raised an eyebrow. She knew about my family situation in general terms, but not the specifics. Interesting. That could be either very helpful or very complicated. Over the next few weeks, Margaret had her team conduct due diligence on Patterson Construction. What they found was exactly what I'd predicted years earlier. A fundamentally sound company being run into the ground by stubborn management and outdated practices. "We can save it," Margaret told me. "But it needs fresh leadership. Someone who understands construction but also understands modern business practices. Someone who can bridge the gap between old-school craftsmanship and new-school efficiency." She offered me the position of Regional Operations Manager for the newly acquired Patterson Construction Division. It would mean returning home. It would mean facing my family. It would mean everything coming full circle in the most unexpected way possible. "I need to think about it," I told her. That night, I called Rose. She was 83 now, but her voice was as sharp as ever. "Sweetheart, what does your heart tell you?" "That I'm terrified." "Good, that means it matters. Now, what does your brain tell you?" I thought about Jake, who would be 21 now. About Mom, who'd probably aged 10 years from worry. About Dad, whose pride was about to cost him everything he'd worked for. That maybe it's time to come home. If you've ever had to decide whether to help someone who hurt you, share your story in the comments. Because what happened next tested everything I thought I knew about forgiveness, family, and second chances. 1 year later, I'm sitting in the same conference room where Dad used to hold his weekly meetings. The same wooden table, the same view of the construction yard. But everything else has changed. The Patterson Construction sign still hangs outside, but now it reads, Patterson Construction, a Morrison Development Company. The trucks are newer, the equipment is updated, and the office hums with efficiency that Dad's old-school methods never achieved. Most importantly, we're profitable again. More profitable than Dad ever managed. The day I walked back into that building was one of the hardest days of my life. Dad was there, of course. He looked older, more tired, but his pride was still intact. When Margaret introduced me as the new Regional Operations Manager, his face went through about 6 different emotions in 10 seconds. "Amanda," he said finally, his voice carefully neutral, "I didn't know you were part of this." "There's a lot you don't know about me, Dad." That first conversation was awkward and painful, but it was the beginning of something neither of us expected, understanding. Over the following months, I implemented changes that Dad had resisted for years. Digital project management systems, updated safety protocols, employee development programs, competitive benefits packages. All the things I'd tried to suggest years earlier when I was just a kid who didn't understand the real world. The results spoke for themselves. Productivity increased by 30%. Employee satisfaction scores went through the roof. We started winning contracts that had previously gone to larger firms. But the real transformation wasn't in the business metrics. It was in the relationships. Jake, who had indeed struggled with the pressure of being the family savior, found his place as head of our new sustainability initiative. Turns out he had innovative ideas about green construction practices that nobody had bothered to listen to. He's brilliant, just not in the way Dad expected him to be. Mom started working part-time again, handling client relations with the same grace she'd always had. But now she also takes art classes on weekends and has started speaking up in meetings. I wasted too many years being quiet, she told me. I'm making up for lost time. And Dad? Dad has been the biggest surprise of all. It took him months to accept that his little girl was now his boss. But slowly, grudgingly, he began to see that I hadn't abandoned the family values he'd taught me. I'd evolved them. You know, he said to me just last week, I was wrong about college. You learned things there I couldn't have taught you. You came back stronger. It wasn't exactly an apology, but from Robert Patterson, it was close enough. The most beautiful moment happened 6 months ago. I was working late, reviewing proposals, when Dad knocked on my office door. Got a minute? He asked. Always, for you. He sat down across from my desk, the same desk where he'd once planned his empire. I owe you an apology. A real one. I let my fear and pride cost us 3 years of your life. 3 years of being a family. Tears started flowing before I could stop them. Dad? No, let me finish. You were right about everything. The business, the changes we needed, the importance of adapting. But mostly, you were right about having the freedom to choose your own path. I'm proud of who you've become. I should have said that years ago. Have you ever received an apology that completely changed a relationship? The healing that followed that conversation has been profound and ongoing. Today, Patterson Construction employs 67 people. We're expanding into 3 new counties. Jake is finishing his environmental engineering degree while working full-time. Mom is happier than I've seen her in years. And Dad and I have coffee together every Tuesday morning, planning the future of our company. Our company, not his, not mine, but ours. Rose, who passed away peacefully last spring at 84, lived to see the family reunited. Her last words to me were, "You built something beautiful, sweetheart, something that will last." If this story resonates with you, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to choose between family expectations and personal dreams? Have you experienced the power of second chances? Drop a comment and share your story. And if you're currently struggling with family pressure or feeling trapped by other people's plans for your life, remember this. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is disappoint people temporarily to become someone who can help them permanently. Hit that like button if this story inspired you, and subscribe for more real stories about family, forgiveness, and finding your own path. Your support means everything to me. Until next time, remember that you are built to last, but you get to choose what you're building.